They say good grades equal money, a good job, and a stable future. But to get to that point, most students experience depression, loss of self esteem, and a slow, grinding halt to the acquisition of knowledge. We will strive to show what grades can do to students and conduct a wide variety of studies and interviews done with those in the system itself. Through extensive research and personal experiences, we seek to find what grades can do to different students and what teachers think of their own traditional grading system. We also want to figure out how the grading system could ultimately be improved and built on to promote learning that school was for. Thank you, Ms. Stolberg, for taking the time to meet with us.
Sure.
I just have a few questions about our grading system in the public education. The first one is, what's your overall opinion on the current grading system?
Well, first of all, I'm a teacher from China. As an outsider, when I see American grading system, it works as other traditional grading system in other country. I think it is not a perfect system, but it's a working system. Because first of all, I think like in some way it motivates students because everyone know they are trying to get an A and avoiding an F, and also at the same time like trying to move from a lower grade to a higher grade. So in some way it's not a perfect way, but it kind of like motivates students.
Grading system, I think the intent and the idea is well placed, that we need to disseminate or be more specific on what we are assessing. So I like the idea of learning outcomes. I think that's a very good idea. I understand that we're in transition and that can be bumpy before staff understands what they're for, and staff is able to explain it to students so they not only understand it but accept it as the norm. Once that happens, I think it'll be far more helpful, not perfect, but far more helpful than just seeing an A, B, C, D, F at the top of your paper, and that's it, without explanation.
The thing about the grading system is that it's very inconsistent. It varies from teacher to teacher. I mean, if you look at Ed Code administration, we don't have anything to do with the grading practices. It's developed by the teacher. But there are some programs that have been successful to come up with school-wide grading outcomes, and that's something that we're striving to do here at ACHS. In fact, we already started having those conversations, and we're going to continue having those conversations. But unfortunately, it's a long process because it really takes an agreement amongst an entire staff. And I know that you guys work a lot in project-based learning groups, and sometimes you're working with 4 or 5 people in your group, and sometimes it's hard to come to consensus. And so you can imagine if you have a staff of 80 coming to a consensus on something as grading practices can be very challenging and problematic because that's something that people really have a philosophical belief about.
In our community, locally, as well as many others, there are students that struggle day to day with this current system. In fact, we asked people in our community how they feel and how it affects them. The results are shocking. We first asked, how important are grades to you? 57% said very important, 41% said somewhat important, and the other 2% said not very important or they do not care at all. Then we asked if they see themselves getting into a 4-year university. 33% said yes, 16% said no, 3% said other, and 48% said maybe or they weren't sure. So many people said grades are at least somewhat important to them, but the majority said they may not make it to a 4-year college. Let's continue. In reference to the last question we asked, is it fair that grades can determine what your future holds and how it can affect your life? 61% said no, it is not fair, 33% said somewhat fair, the other 6% said yes, it is fair, or other. As we can see, there's a problem here. If people do not think that this system will benefit them, then why is it still here? We then asked, should grades and the learning system be redesigned to help us improve and gain knowledge, rather than just passing the class? 83% of participants in the survey said yes, this is a good idea. 15% said maybe, 2% said no. 98% of the people surveyed would at least like to consider this. They believe that maybe this current system is not that great and could be improved. We believe this is a very apparent sign that at the local level there needs to be some action.
What's your opinion on the current traditional grading system?
Personally, for me, I don't really like it too much. I mean, we got to put up with it, but I mean, it's what we got. It could be a lot better.
Okay. Have grades affected your mindset in school?
Yeah, a lot, because it's trained us to be more of like obedience and more of like just following directions and orders and guidelines instead of actually learning and expanding our knowledge.
I believe that GPAs are very misleading. Terrible students can get good GPAs if they memorize the content well enough, but that doesn't mean they learned it.
I feel like a lot of times the grading system is based on how we present something rather than the actual content. A lot of times it's both, but teachers mostly focus on our delivery or the way that we present information.
Do you have any opinions on how the grading system affects student mentality?
Yeah, I think I've taught from 7th grade all the way through 12th grade. This is my first year teaching 12th grade, and it really has been kind of eye-opening on how different the opinions are at the 12th grade level. At 7th grade level, students, there seemed to be more of a hunger to improve their knowledge, and then as they grow older, it's more about improving their grade. And then there is such a, and then there becomes a separation of those kids that have to have that 4.0 and get more emotionally attached to that, especially in the cases where they might get a B plus in a class, and the psychological stress on them is far more than a kid that has a 69.5. Nobody talks about, God, I got to learn something from my econ class, or it's the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we've done in public education.
Definitely.
The short-term effects of the grading system are clear to the common student. A boost of morale or self-esteem may come from achieving grade goals, but there is a much darker side to all of these hard, set measuring marks. The sheer importance placed on grades by schools, teachers, parents, and word of mouth have caused students unnecessary stress and worry. In fact, according to a medical journal study by the NCBI, or the National Center for Biotechnology Information, bad grades led to greater drops in self-esteem. Instability of self-esteem predicted increases in depressive symptoms for students initially more depressed. Grades, or some type of measurement in a student's learning, are necessary. But when the inflation of their importance can cause a spurt of depression and drops in self-esteem, something must be done. Also, a grade may cause students to put their health to the side in the short term and instead work to exhaustion in order to meet a grade. Learning, by then, is in the rearview mirror. People always like to stress that good grades get you into college, but there is rarely any weight put into the fact that learning lets you thrive in life. For now, students of our generation, and if nothing changes in the future, will continue to face constant pressure and stress because of their general letter grades.
Grades make me stressed out.
You want to elaborate?
School has created this mindset that, hey, grades are everything. Unless you're getting these grades, then you're not really going to have a bright future. So in that sense, I've been influenced in a way to think like that, which sucks, but it's true.
I think the traditional grading practices are outdated. We're here to teach you the concept, not teach you the concept by February 2nd, you didn't get it, forget it, we're out and we're moving on. It's, okay, you struggled with this particular area, so we're going to spend some time and we're going to teach you what you need to know, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to demonstrate that you know it. And once you demonstrate that you know it, the grade should reflect that you do know it. And I'd much rather have that.
The whole society is actually adding more social values to the grade. And eventually to students, this kind of like identify who they are. And when you look at the high school student, they are still at a stage of identity forming. So they kind of like, some of them definitely get affected. They kind to use the grade they get to kind of define themselves instead of focusing on other areas of their strengths. So eventually, in college, it goes even worse. It kind of like grades equals currency almost. You know, what grades you get kind of like defined or determined in the future what kind of job you will get. Like when students get a bad grade, they kind of like just demotivated, and but teachers don't really define or recognize their effort.
In the global aspect, grades are something every teenager can relate to, regardless of cultural or lingual differences. Stress is a feeling that each and every student knows, be it from deadlines, learning difficulties, or just the class they're in. School affects everyone in some way. Here in the United States, teens are forced along a stiff path of subjects, but in Germany, there are 5 types of secondary schools, each with different aims of education. Secondary schools in Germany are ran very similar to colleges. The class schedule isn't solid, and there may be 4 classes one day and 3 the next. The students are given a lot of freedom as they are expected to be responsible, and their education is up to them. Even with these freedoms, though, students still adhere to grades of A's to F's, and they must still reach the average goal determined by the state. Robert L. Freed, author of the book The Game of School, stated, "We have opted not to create schools as places where children's curiosity, sensory awareness, power, and communication can flourish, but rather to erect temples of knowledge where we sit them down, tell them a lot of stuff we think is important, try to control their restless curiosity, and test them to see how well they've listened to us." Page 58 to 59. This is exactly the problem worldwide. Much of the time, students are just buckets of collected data without the software to run any of the programs they installed during their schooling.
That this is the missing link. This is the key to education. In special education, from the time a student is identified as a student with needs, the system is in place for something that's called an individual education plan, IEP. This IEP sets goals on a yearly basis and a triennial basis 3 times throughout the year. Goals are very specific. Communication between teachers and special ed teachers and the students and the parents, it's all there. It's actually part of law. So why don't we have an IEP for all? If we see such great progress and we've already got the mechanism in place to allow more individualized learning, teaching and learning, then why aren't we doing that for every student? Money. All we need is money. It's simple, right? Give us the money and the directive to do specifically that for every student when they start off in kindergarten all the way through high school. I mean it, all the way through high school. At the end of one school year, student A gets together with teachers A and teachers for next year as a transition. So you have a transitional thing that, Jace's skills are this. Areas where he needs improvement are that. You've got parents and guardians, you've got the student right there making these decisions on how you learn best. We never do that. We never ask our students, how do you learn? Because we're afraid. Because we only know how to teach 1 or 2 ways.
Are we where we need to be in terms of individualizing or differentiating our grading practices? No, not yet. I don't think we're there. We've got a lot of work to do in that area. And again, I planted that seed during our focus group meetings, probably February, right around February. And we started having those conversations, and those are things that we're going to continue to do next year. How can we differentiate our grading practices to meet the needs of our students? Because at the end of the day, the goal is to teach the students what they need to know and give them the opportunity to demonstrate that they understand it so they can be successful.
Grades have been around for a long time and are usually synonymous with the foundation of the public school system. Compulsory laws passed in 1852 required some education for students in Massachusetts via free public education. Yale University had created the initiative of creating a scale to grade students 39 years earlier in 1813 on a scale of 1 to 4. According to Mark Durham, professor at the Athens State University, this innovative new system continued to be developed until Harvard in 1877 experimented with 100% basis and used letters for the first time in 1883. Since then, these grades have been further refined to include the obvious F, failing levels, and the other passing grades. However, this was a system created more than a century ago. It was innovative back then, but we may need more of the same type of progress today, and the same type of Ivy League action in order to adapt to the new reality of the 21st century. There are no quick solutions to this problem. Teachers have expressed that there is also no specific timeline for implementing the solution of the grading system due to all the variables.
A lot of money and a lot of professional development. Okay. We would need every single teacher.
So it's a long process. If we get this thing done in a year, I would be pretty happy.
Yeah.
Even if we got a pilot going in December, I would be very happy.
Every staff member has said that any solution would take at least a year to implement a pilot, maybe even more. If you think this problem only affects high school students, then you're completely wrong. Higher chances of suicide later in life has also been linked to low GPAs in high school. According to PsychCentral.com, low grades cause increased risk in suicide at a young age and can be carried over into adulthood. CNN stated that suicide rates have increased over the last few years. For every 100,000 people, 13 of them will take their own lives. Of those 13 people, was their GPA a factor? Did it leave them vulnerable to these feelings? Researchers are still debating the topic. You can't make someone learn if they refuse. But this isn't about them. This is about the kids who study and work hard every day in school but have trouble learning because they just can't understand or are not inspired by a subject. These are the kids who are affected. Kids just like us. Expressing identity, one of the 7 world history themes, relates to our topic because grades have been shown to be some type of representation for the students. From our survey results, this is done unfairly and it is not a great representation of the students. Then why should it be used to express identity and possibly convey someone's intelligence or smarts? Our interviews with students show this overlying message and the stress that GPA and grades cause. Most likely this results from the emphasis put on grades deciding futures, deciding what you will become, deciding what you are. Some material in school is forgotten right after tests and exams, and some may not even be needed in the future, so why must they be used heavily in determining someone's readiness or quality in entering higher education or the workforce? Identity is a huge part of any individual, and grades have been shown to affect and be part of someone's identity. So why not better the system to better the person?
It doesn't even matter. I'm not learning anything. To improve grades, you have to find some way to make it more personal towards that student that you're interacting with. And if we do that, I think grades will be much better.
Everybody we asked, including the principal, including students, thought that grades need to be more oriented around them because everybody learns differently.
Honestly, if you don't get nervous or if you don't get stressed about grades, you're probably lying, or you have like a 4.5 GPA. You shouldn't have to be stressed about grades. Grades should be a second thought. You should be thinking about learning and about your future, not if you can pass the class. People learn at different paces and in different ways, and it's not fair to everyone if they don't get a good chance to go to their full potential.
See that it's not their fault, where we are today, but it will be their fault if we don't make change.